I've got an idea. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Oxygen Not Included. Today I've got a little experiment for you. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter video, but today we're going to take a look at the steam turbine. It's been requested in some of the comments over here to have a steam turbine setup, so that's what I've been working on. Okie dokie, so how steam turbines work as compared to how they were when the preview was, or parts of the preview was working. All it does now is actually move steam from the bottom side past it, and then it produces 2 kilowatts of power, so long as it's hot enough and so long as there's enough pressure. So those are two pretty major things that have to kind of be around this steam turbine in order to get it running. Now, there's several different ways we could probably set this thing up, but what I would like to do is set it up in such a way that it's going to be nice and efficient. Mostly because the amount of thermal energy we have is finite. We don't have an infinite amount of energy, but we do have quite a bit of it. So there's a lot of magma down here, and we can see that this magma has a fair amount of mass to it, being 1,840 kilograms. However, the thermal capacity for that is 1 watt, or 1 joule per kilogram, so whatever. And we can kind of figure out that there isn't an infinite amount of magma down here. And essentially what we're going to end up doing is drawing the heat out of this, pumping it into steam, and then that steam will run off and turn that turbine. So rather than cool that steam back down into water and then pump it back down on top of the magma, I think what I would rather do is just kind of pump this steam around and let it gain a little bit of temperature so that, the temperature that comes out of the steam turbine, which gets slightly cooler, will actually just get hotter again and, just gonna keep moving past it. And we'll use the door compressors in order to move that steam from above the chamber back down to the bottom, and we'll do that for free. So this is the arrangement that I've kind of finally got working. It's actually been kind of a pain in the butt to get working up till now, but it does work. However, I will tell you that even though I have 2 separate door compressors going on right here, it is slowly losing pressure up here at the top. What that means is that eventually this steam turbine will get to a point where it doesn't have enough pressure in order to stay running. The other thing that is being used up here is, well, essentially thermal energy. So what we have here is we have the rock down here. You can see that the temperature is dropping. So this is 1,840 kilograms. So we can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different tiles of magma right there. And then I have a thermal shift plate here, which is needed and not needed depending on how much water you have pumped into the system. And essentially that is made of tungsten, so that's drawing the thermal energy out of the rock and putting it into the steam. Eventually this thing will get too cool and it won't run. So if we take a look at the steam turbine once again, we can see that the temperature here is that it requires, well, it doesn't really tell you, but if I drop one over here, it'll tell us. Or it won't. Okay, fine. All right, there we go. So it requires at least 3 kilograms of steam that's going to be around it in order for it to function. And that is actually kind of a low number. It requires more than that in my experience because it moves steam from down here to above it. So it's constantly moving quite a bit of steam past it. So that number is a little bit, how can I say it? It's deceptive. What I found is that down here, I'm using a couple of mechanized airlocks in order to, essentially they're bulkheads, right? So I've got this big pressure that I'm building up down here, then those open up, let that steam through. And what I found is that I need at least 20 kilograms down here in order to have this thing actually function for a good amount of time to produce power. So I would say that number is much closer to 20-ish kilograms, but you'll just kind of have to play around with it a little bit right there. It also requires at least a temperature of 251 degrees Celsius, which is quite hot, especially when we consider that the thermal aqua tuner up here will melt down at 175 degrees Celsius. So unfortunately, the free energy thing will have to use something a little bit different than the aqua tuner system that we had up here in order to make that work. That leads me down the road of potentially getting free energy out of the metal refinery if we do that, that little liquid trick, if it still works, which I don't know if it does. But if you were to take that liquid and go like this and feed it back into itself, that it would continuously get hot and hotter and hotter until it actually breaks the pipe, and then the hot gases or liquids flow out of it. That may work, but that's not necessarily free energy because you still have to convert, you know, a raw metal into a refined metal. So I don't think there's any free trips, you know, or free lunches when it comes to energy here in this setup. So the best we can really hope for here is to get the most out of the energy that we have available. So I think setting this up in such a way that it's automated is your best guess. Now this is a lot of automation here, mostly because I'm experimenting with it a little bit, but for the most part I'm using the new smart battery, and that smart battery in this situation, we can see right here, will actually just plug in. I'll just get rid of this. And what this is doing is it's controlling these mechanized airlocks here. So if this battery up here and its total capacity, along with, you know, a larger battery right there, is above full, well then it's not going to turn on, right? So it has to drain down to the point of 0 in order to become active again. So in this case, maybe I'll say 10. So if it comes down to 10, which is actually quite a bit less than what we have in the battery because they don't drain at the same rate. I wish this was a percentage rather than just a total kilojoules, but whatever. You can see here is that it's automation. You know, it went back to green once it got down to 10 kilojoules in there. So maybe setting that to 0 is the right way to go. But the point is it's now active. So those doors open up. We can see that this is now spinning back up, and it'll produce some more electricity now, which will then fill up the batteries, and then the automation will close those bulkhead doors, turning the system off and letting the steam turbine spin back down. Now there is a automation signal that runs to the steam turbine. However, I have found that right now this doesn't really do anything. I don't know why. It just seems to be broken in my observations. So even if I leave that off, which I think it might have been off there, it still spun up and produced energy. As far as the door sequence here, you can see that I've extended it from what you've typically seen me use so that it runs an extra door here. So all I did is do buffer, filter, buffer, not. So really the normal sequence is just buffer, filter, buffer, not. If you can remember that, then you're all set. And then the outlet is in between the AND gate and the first buffer, and then you just drop off of each buffer from then on. Now you can set this up in different arrangements in order to get it to work a little different. So you could have this to where you have maybe 5 doors and they all open and then they close in sequence except for that last door. We've done that a few times. But for the most part, this system here just works on moving the pressure that's above here below it, and then once we use up this electricity, which you can see I have several liquid pumps running right now, randomly they're just pumping up and down, that uses up the electrical power. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm preserving the energy that I have available down here until I need it, and then it'll spin back up and power up the system. So this is a nice, efficient way in order to use the steam turbine. Alright, so I want to keep this video just a little bit shorter. I've been dealing with, my sinuses have been kicking my butt all week. I don't have a huge amount of energy to do a very long video, and I also want to make this a little bit more instructional rather than a long, drawn-out experiment here. But what I want to see is just how much energy I can get out of like a known amount of magma. That way you can kind of take a look at something like this and say, okay, well I have this many tiles, this seems like a good spot, and a reasonable understanding of just how much energy we could potentially get out of that. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to set this up and measure just how much I can get out of a known amount of magma here. Alright, so here is my little experiment here. You can see everything is up to temperature now. As far as the buildings are concerned, we're at 250-ish degrees Celsius. We have the doors that are roughly about 300. So everything is at a decent temperature here. What I'm going to go ahead and do is put in enough magma for one single tile. So that is 1,840 kilograms. And I'm also going to go ahead and just get rid of this thermal shift plate. I don't think we need it, and I don't really want it to mess up, you know, my thermal energy there. So let's go ahead and paint one of those in. So there we have it. That is magma. It's at 1,726 degrees Celsius, so it's very, very hot. Now for the water. I'm going to go ahead and put this in at 500 kilograms, you know, per drop, so that it turns into steam. We'll be able to measure just how much steam we have. Remember that I would like to have usually above 20 kilograms of steam pressure down here. That's like the absolute minimum in order for this thing to get running. And that's what I found actually worked well. So that right there was 500 kilograms of water. So I should have 500 kilograms of steam down here. So you can see that that turned on. Now the steam is dropping in pressure. And we've now gone below the pressure threshold here. So at that point it actually closed the door. So I'm going to go ahead and add another 500 kilograms of water here. You can see that that's turned everything into rock at this point. So now I just have hot rocks down here. You can see the system here is starting to kind of eat up some of that steam and move it. However, the temperature here is still too cold. So I've got to wait for either this steam to heat up, or that's maybe where I put the thermal shift plate back in. Because if it gets too cold, or if it, you know, doesn't do anything else, if it runs into too low of a pressure, all it's going to do is like cool the steam down, because it kind of cools the steam as it's moving past, and it won't really generate enough power to be useful. So I want to make sure that I'm meeting those conditions before I'm actually firing it up. So you can see here the temperature's risen to the point where it's actually going to work. And now it's going to start moving steam that's already kind of in this little chamber down here. The other thing I should note here is that this is made of iron ore, these doors. And the reason it's made of iron ore because the melting temperature is very, very high on iron ore. So pretty much everything down here is made of iron. So you can see here right off the bat, this thing started to run, and now its temperature is too cool again. So you can see its progress bar has gone down, and it's no longer producing power. And that has everything to do with it just simply not being hot enough. So it looks like I'm going to need to use the thermal shift plate after all. Okay, so now things have kind of settled out to the point where the steam up here is not very high pressure. So I can go ahead and turn these doors on. I guess what I'm trying to determine at this point is just how much water I'm putting into this. You want to use enough to make it work, but at the same time you don't want to use too much. So what I'm seeing here is this is quickly becoming under pressure. So having 1 kilogram of water in here is not enough. I need to have more. So we're up to 1,500, so 1,500 kilograms of water. That quickly turned into steam. However, that also drops the temperature. So just from looking at this, what I'm going to say here is that trying to run this off of just, you know, one tile of magma is not really a practical thing. So I'm going to go ahead and reset this, and I'm going to try it with more magma. So let's go ahead and try to double up the amount of magma I have. Alright, so that heated up to the point of actually starting to run, and it looks like it's getting just it's struggling for temperature, but alright, so this one's kind of a pain in the butt too. So I'm gonna go ahead and start it again, but with even more magma. I don't know, this is kind of what I've been running into as I've been trying to mess around with this steam turbine. It's quite picky, really. So if I put 3 blobs of magma down there, so each tile now is about 1 kilogram worth. And then if I put in, I'm gonna put 2 tons of water in here, but I'm gonna go ahead and introduce it in a little bit of a different fashion. So I'll bring it in on the sides here, and that should turn to steam. Hopefully it won't turn my magma right into a rock right off the bat. Yeah. Oh, crap. All right, I tell you what, this thing's driving me nuts, and it's really not cooperating no matter what I try to do here. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead and put magma down here, and it's gonna be 5 tiles. So there we have it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to put 5 kilograms of water, or 5 tons of water. So 5,000 kilograms of water. So there's 1, here's 2, 3, 4, 5. So the amount of steam I have down here is quite a lot, which is okay. It's good to have a lot of extra steam pressure because that takes care of the pressure situation as far as the steam turbine is concerned. The other thing I'm seeing down here is that this turned into a giant chunk of rock as compared to like little pieces that you could pick up. I think that just has to do with how much magma is down there. I think that's better for my thermal shift plate too, so I should be able to get, move thermal energy from here out much faster. You can see the temperature right here in the middle is 1,000 degrees Celsius, 1,065 and then 1,300. So you can see it's definitely drawing that thermal energy from the middle here where that thermal shift plate is. So I think that's a kind of a key thing. Not to try to tap into too small of a source of magma. I'm just trying to figure out how this thing works. Hopefully you guys can take something from this and actually make use of it. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to above its maximum here, and we'll try to measure just how much we can get out of, 5 tiles of magma. And I'm also going to get rid of that larger battery there. And I'm just going to go with smart batteries. The reason I'm going with smart batteries is because they don't drain over time. So that's one less variable to worry about. So now that I've built up some nice electric charge, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my pumps here and just start to suck down quite a lot of power. Okay, so I just started cycle 68, and for the first time, this thing is starting to become too cold. You can see that the rock down here at the bottom is 319 degrees Celsius. So it's dropped quite a bit as far as the amount of temperature it has. So we're starting to get to the point here where we've used up about all of the energy that we're going to get out of, this what once was magma. Yeah, see, there we go. That was running to fill up those batteries, but now we can see that the temperature dropped down to the point where it was no longer able to produce, power. And I think we'll see this again. It'll happen again as it's trying to fill up these batteries. Looks like it's going to make it this time. Alright, so I've got to be getting close here because this thermal shift plate is barely hot enough to, add anything to the steam. The steam overall, its temperature is kind of getting cooler. You can see we're only at about 200 degrees Celsius up here. However, we do have quite a bit more down, a little bit more. I guess we're at 250 down there. I don't know. So you can see it's struggling for temperature. And that's really, pulling away from how much we can make. And I think at this point it's pretty much stopped completely. Oh, no. It's going to warm back up and it's going to run a little bit more. Here we go. Get a little more out of there. Alright, so let me just speed this up a little bit here. We'll move to this last stage of the experiment. We'll take it through cycle 70, see if we get anything more out of it. It is not making much, but, we want to get everything out of it that we can. One observation I'm making here is that we've pretty much just about pulled a vacuum. Well, maybe not a vacuum, but it's like 100 grams up here. However, down here we have like 130 kilograms of steam. So this thing is blocking off the steam. It wants to run past it. It's just not hot enough. So you can see there in cycle 70, it was only able to get 35 kilojoules out of that. All right, so let's take a look at the results for this experiment. And this is what we have. We have kilojoules that we were able to produce there, the amount we used, and then I threw like a percentage for efficiency of how well we used that during the cycle. So that's more or less just how much is used compared to how much we actually produced. So there was some waste. Our overall efficiency was 80%. Not to mention we do have some thermal energy that is still held in the steam currently. So, that number is kind of relevant, but maybe not necessarily. It does give us some sort of measuring stick. The big thing here, though, is that out of 9,200 kilograms of magma, I was able to extract 3,271 kilojoules of power. All right, so let's see here. What else could we do? There's a lot of different math we could do at this point. But let's see here. At 2 kilojoules, which is the operating speed of this steam turbine, if we were to run that continuously for one day, how many kilojoules would I get? that would be 2 times 600 because there's 600 seconds in a cycle. So therefore, if I take the total capacity of what I have, which was 5, tiles of magma there, divided by running it continuously, that means 2.7 cycles is as much as that thing would run before that thermal energy was more or less used up to the point where it could no longer operate a steam turbine. So that's 1.5 tile per cycle. At least that's what I'm seeing here as far as this experiment, giving us some sort of idea of how efficient a steam turbine is to set up and operate. So if we take that and we kind of figure that, there's a lot of magma down here. However, a lot of this, is it even mineable? That's the real question. Let's go ahead and drop a duplicate inside of here. So neutronium. Can you mine neutronium? Okay, so in order to mine neutronium, you're going to need a seasoned miner. So you'll have to have basically somebody who has achieved the job of digging quite a lot. So they've gone from apprentice to miner to seasoned miner, and at that point, they can get to the point where they can really dig around this neutronium here and, expose a lot more magma to your steam generator. So obviously there is a finite amount of magma, but unlike in previous versions of the game, we can actually get to all of this magma. So down here is a lot of energy. Whereas previously, we'd only be able to get to pockets like this right here because we can't dig through the neutronium. So that's interesting. It's something to keep in mind, something to really prepare for. And there's also different ways of getting that thermal energy from here, elsewhere. One of those being you can use different gases. So hydrogen is a really good one. You can also use phosphorus in its gaseous state. So you could dig that up and actually melt it down into a gas state, and that's actually more thermally conductive than what we get out of hydrogen. Let's see if I can let's go ahead and make a little bit of that. No, there you go. Have some oxygen. It's gonna get kind of hot in here though. All right, so let's just go ahead real quick. Teleport duplicates over there. There you go, buddy. Yeah, sorry about that. It's for science. Don't hate me. All right, so if I find phosphorus here. Yeah, so here we go. Here's some phosphorus. We'll kind of paint that in. And then as that actually melts, you can see its details. It has a melting point of 44 degrees Celsius into a liquid. So we'll see that turn into a liquid here really quick. There we go. And then that turned into a gas. And the thermal properties of phosphorus here has a specific heat capacity of only 0.7, which is good because it's nice and low. The thermal conductivity of 0.2, what? And its boiling temperature is 280 degrees Celsius. So that's kind of interesting. So 0.236 is its thermal conductivity. Now if I compare that... I know I can see this, but I can't actually see it. So there we go. Hydrogen. See, that thermal conductivity is only 0.168, and it has a higher specific heat capacity. So it's got more capacity, but it also is slower to change. So that's one possibility to, transfer thermal energy from your magma to steam or to water or some sort of water chamber a little bit faster if you want to go ahead and use phosphorus. That's a fun idea. So we'll have to explore more ideas here and try to set up a little bit more advanced steam turbine generating station in the future. But for right now, I think that was a pretty useful first experiment. Gives us something to go by. So if you got some ideas about actually setting up a steam turbine and how you're making it efficient and how you're setting it up inside your base, go ahead and leave that down there in the comment section below because I'm going to do another video on this at some point here in the future. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this little episode here of Oxygen Not Included. If I've earned your subscription, then thank you so much for that. Have a great day, guys. Stay awesome. Peace. Brothgar out.